Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being a very patient audience. Uh, every beginning is a chance to create something extremely beautiful. As we begin today's prestigious event, may I please call upon our esteemed speakers to help us light the ceremonial lamp.
Let us start this auspicious event with an invocation to the Almighty.
शारदे माँ हे शारदे माँ हे शारदे माँ हे शारदे माँ अज्ञानता से हमें तार दे माँ अज्ञानता से हमें तार दे माँ तू स्वर की देवी संगीत तुझसे हर शब्द तेरा है हर गीत तुझसे तू स्वर की देवी संगीत तुझसे हर शब्द तेरा है हर गीत तुझसे हम हैं अकेले हम हैं अधूरे हम हैं अकेले हम हैं अधूरे तेरी शरण में हमें प्यार दे माँ तेरी शरण में हमें प्यार दे माँ हे शारदे माँ हे शारदे माँ हे शारदे माँ हे शारदे माँ अज्ञानता से हमें तार दे माँ अज्ञानता से हमें तार दे माँ अज्ञानता से
the smallest of anecdotes and experiences form the fabric of society. Whether narrated under a banyan tree, in a classroom, or to oneself when speaking in the mirror, stories bring unprecedented changes, often surprising us pleasantly.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 6th edition of TEDxYouth at JNS. It is with great honor and privilege that we welcome you all to this long-awaited event.
Discovery, innovation, inspiration. These three words have brought us here today. We are gathered to delve deep into TED's motto of creating communities through stories. Today's event is designed to help you see life through the lens of all our eminent speakers. On that note, we extend a very warm welcome to Principal Srimati Kalpana Patange, Vice Principal and ISC Coordinator Ms. Sonali Gandhi, Vice Principal Ms. Rekha Nair, and Headmistress Ms. Pamela Jacob.
Head, Jamnabai Narsi International School, Srimati Jasmine Madani. The core team, Jamnabai Narsi PTA Chairperson, Captain Trisha Mohan and team, JNAA team, parents, teachers, and my dear friends. May I request our team members to present our eminent speakers with a token of our appreciation. Mrs. Madhurima Chakrabarti.
Sorry, may I request the school core team members to please present our speakers with their tokens of appreciation. Ms. Kalpana, could you please come and felicitate our first two speakers? Yes, ma'am, on stage. Our first speaker is Mrs. Madhurima Chakrabarti. Can we please have a huge round of applause for her? Our second speaker is Mr. Gautam Acharya. Can we please have a huge round of applause for him? Thank you so much. May I please request Vice Principal and ISC Coordinator, Ms. Sonali Gandhi, to felicitate the next two speakers. Our third speaker for the evening is Chef Anil Rohira. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Kiran Bhatt. Thank you, ma'am. May I request Vice Principal Ms. Rekha Nair to felicitate our final speaker. Our final speaker for the evening is Dr. Sanket Pisar. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, members of the core team. Kindly adhere to the following guidelines that will be mentioned now. We request you all to keep your phones on silent and avoid flash photography at all costs. Each talk will be followed by a short question and answer session, during which the organizing team members will pass mics to the audience members after they are recognized by our moderator.
Please avoid leaving the auditorium during talks and performances, and feel free to reach out to any organizing committee member in case of any doubts or concerns. As mentioned in the schedules provided, we will have a brief interval after our third speaker. Refreshments for the speakers will be made available in E38 and 39 in the interval.
Without further ado, let us commence this event with our very next speaker, Mrs. Madhurima Chakrabarti. Mrs. Madhurima Chakrabarti is a seasoned corporate communication professional working in the pharma sector. Along with that, she is also a mom influencer and manages an Instagram page called Tripping Mommy with over 50,000 followers. Through this page, she is empowering young parents to raise happy kids without the guilt of losing out on life. She started traveling with her child when her daughter was 3 months old, and that is what inspired her to name her page Tripping Mommy, because she believes that being a mom is not the end, but the beginning of a fruitful journey. Please welcome Mrs. Madhurima Chakrabarti. Check.
Is it better? So, good evening, everyone. My name is Madhurima, and I'm very honored to be here. And being the first speaker, I think I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulder. So, I hope I live up to it. So, I'm going to talk about a very, very personal episode of my life, and it's a very short and crisp speech. So, I hope I can keep you all engaged. And do stop me in the middle if you kind of have any questions, because it's a very informal speech. It's not like something that I've prepared, like it's not a speech, it's a very personal life thing that has happened with me. So as I stand here on stage, I'm thinking, how did I land here? As a kid, one of my biggest fear was to be in the spotlight. I have been petrified to be in the spotlight. All my life, I wanted to never stand on a stage and speak. And I want to go back about 25 years of my life. When I was in grade 4 or 5, I used to get this nightmare, I used to wake up, and my mom has told me many times that, I used to wake up crying. And this nightmare was that I've been made to stand in a stage, and as soon as I reach the dais, I freeze. I can't talk. I don't know how to talk. I completely shut down. I start crying. And somebody in the audience shouts, Maddie. People generally call me Maddie. Maddie, speak. And I don't know how to speak. I have completely shut down. And then everybody starts chanting, Maddie, speak. Why aren't you speaking? And I start crying. And my dream is broken. I have abruptly awakened up. And I'm crying, and my mom comes and says, what happened? And it used to be a recurring dream. It did not happen. It was always there. I was petrified of my being in the spotlight, to an extent that when I was growing up, I started avoiding going for family gatherings, because I had to introduce myself. And introducing yourself means you have to go ahead and talk. You have to it led to more conversations. So when I was in school, I was a good student, but I never raised my hands because that meant I had to talk. And let me tell you more about how this, I have grown up with this fear of hating my voice. I hated my voice. I never liked my voice. I was petrified of my voice. I never liked any kind of people talking to me. So it kind of became that she's an introvert girl, she doesn't want to be kind of in the stage. She likes to be in herself. But that was, I think, an acquired. People who know me now, and there are some in the audience, they would say that, oh my God, she's so talkative. But as a kid, I grew up as somebody who had just one friend, and I still have just one friend from my school days and one friend from my college days. That's all. I never took part in stage theaters, I never took part in any dances, I never wanted to be on stage. And let me tell you more about this fear and how this became such a big fear, I want to ask all of you a question. Any of you out here don't like to listen, after you must have spoken in the mic, but after you hear yourself, you don't like it. Like, you don't like what you said. You don't like, anybody here who doesn't like? Okay, there are a few people. Okay, yeah. So there are, it's very common that it's that there's a cognitive dissonance between what you perceive and what you expect. So you must have perceived something that I would sound like this, but it's completely different. For me, it was way beyond that. I was petrified. I had a fear of my own voice. I never liked my own voice. And that kept aggravating. It didn't go down. And I'll tell you how this began. So why I'm telling this, because there are a lot of kids here, and there are a lot of parents here, and I want to tell everyone that, be very careful, because this can become a very, very difficult situation for a lot of people when they grow up, because people don't take this seriously. For me, I have felt it. So when I was in grade 3, I was selected for this elocution contest. And my mom had prepared me, I was very charged up, and my mom had made me learn a poem. And I was very happy. I learned it, and I went up on stage, and I narrated to the best of my capability. I was 8, 9 years old. And I ran down from the stage, and the first person that you go to is generally your class teacher. So I ran to her, and she was like, I asked her, ma'am, how was my speech? She was like, is that your voice? I never knew your voice was so shrill. You never sounded like that. I went to my classmates, and they were like, why were you singing on stage? And I was like, okay. And there were a lot of people, they were saying that, why you're this word? Say this word again. It is sounding so weird. Say this in the mic again. So it kept on, and it was not once. It kept on. There were some small things where even if I tried, people started making fun of it. And I know that some of them are my very good friends now, and they must have not even said it with the intent that it was really wrong, or they really wanted to hurt me. But mockingly also, if somebody said, na, say it again, na, I like what you said. Why did you shout so much? Small things. It kept on piling on my mind that my voice is very weird, and I should never be on stage. I should never be talking. I should never be in the spotlight. So that's better. That's how I am. And to the extent that when I went to Delhi, I am from a small town it's not a small town, it's called Jamshedpur in Jharkhand. And it's not a small town anymore. But when growing up, I'm from Jamshedpur. So when I came to Delhi for my further education, I was a good student. I got to one of the best colleges in Delhi. But whenever there was stage shows or something, I said, no, I can't do that. I can never go up on stage. And I was happy that way. I liked to be called introvert. Very, very happy to be called introvert. And life went on. Even when I started working, I realized that had become my personality. If somebody told me to present, I would comfortably pass it on to somebody. I'll do all the base work, but never kind of go up and say that, okay, I will present. So yeah, that was my character. I kind of enjoyed. I was happy with it, living my life. And many years later, my daughter was born. One day, I'd gone back to my hometown. And very briefly, my mom kind of knows about this fear. But over the years, she thought I've kind of given it up. So my daughter was 3 months old, and I remember she was not ready to sleep. So I told my mom, told my mama that, Ma, why don't you sing a lullaby for her when I used to sing when I was a kid, and maybe she'll fall asleep. And my mom was like, why are you saying that? Why aren't you singing? I said, no, mama, if I sing, she will never fall asleep. She cannot, if I sing, she'll wake up, And my mom, she was working at that point of time. She decides and tells me, no, you are shrugging your own responsibilities. You're a grown-up, you're 30-year-old right now. You can't be doing this anymore. If you are like this, your daughter, I don't know what you'll make your daughter, and she just goes out of the house and she goes to her school. And I had no option, but with a 3-month-old, I start singing to her. And surprisingly, she fell asleep, And it went on and on. She used to like my voice. She used to respond to my voice. She used to smile when I used to talk to her. And it was so joyful, seeing that somebody who, she's accepting me just the way I am and she's liking my voice. So that day, from that day, something happened within me. And I said that if I don't change now, I cannot make her the way I want her to be. I don't want her to grow up with any kind of fear. She should like her body. She should love herself. So when I started, and I have also I've been working since the time she was 6 months old. I am also a pharma professional, and I head one of the largest pharma companies. I head the corporate communications there. So when I went back to work, I started writing. Whenever I used to feel a little low, I used to start writing, and that's where I started writing under the alias name Tripping Mommy. Because, there were a lot of things that parents were challenged at that point of time. When I loved traveling also. So when I told my mother or my family members, extended family members, that I'm going to travel with my child, and they were like, oh, your kid is just 3 months old, you can't do this. There's certain conditioning that parents have, that you can't do this. And a lot of conditioning comes to somehow mothers. So I started writing about a lot of things that had affected me, my voice, under the alias name Tripping Mommy. At that point of time, my daughter's 8, and she really would have loved to be here in the audience. Right before coming, she fell sick. I was just telling them that we got a call from her school that she's down with fever and she couldn't join us here, and I would have loved, she was so excited. But anyways, so I decided to write about a lot of stuff that had affected my mind. And blogs were very popular. This is about 7-8 years back. I started writing blogs and never used my name, but used the name Tripping Mommy. And a lot of national dailies, including Times of India, Hindustan Times, published it. And so many mothers reached out to me, you are speaking my mind. So I was like, okay, this is not only me who's facing these kind of things. There are issues everywhere, and people, it's just that we are scared to kind of speak it out. So I kept writing under that alias name Tripping Mommy. And then COVID hit, and Instagram had started picking up. So I created a page called Tripping Mommy, where I just shared. I did not use my voice even then, because somewhere I was kind of, how can I put out my voice? So it was most pictures and write-ups. One fine day during COVID, I don't know what happened. I just created a fun character. I was like, let me try something, what will happen? And I'll remove it. It was created in the mind. I was just sitting in the bedroom, and there was this fun character that I created called Bengali Pishima. I'm a Bengali. So, I created this character of how Bengali women would have reacted during situations, mimicking them. So old Bengali women, if they are put in some funny situation, how would they have reacted? So I created this Bengali Pishima character, and I did not change my voice. I spoke as I speak in my shrill voice, and I had that first video that I created. I was very sure that nobody would like it. I would have removed it by the next day, but anyway, I just kept it. And the video went viral. The first video that I created around as a character, Bengali Pishima, it went viral. And I was like, okay, this is my own voice, and people are liking my own voice. I don't have to do anything. This is insane. Of course, it attracted a lot of negative. If you put yourself into public forum, then there attracts a lot of negative comments, but that did not deter me. I put out a second video. So I also realized that I had progressed a lot in my self-journey. If I could do that, even after getting negative comments, I had definitely kind of evolved as a human being. So that I created a couple of videos. Some did really well. People really liked my voice. I got, during COVID, there were so many people who used to reach out to me that, we want you to talk in this voice. Why don't you talk in this voice? This voice is so interesting. You actually sound like those South Calcutta aunties. I was like, okay, this is very interesting. Something that was such a big fear is people are actually liking it. So I think social media, of course, it has its own share of perils. For me, it gave me a lot of high. And so from there, and I also started seeing that since I had gained a little bit of confidence and myself, I mean, of course, I'm still conscious. I'm standing here and my hands are still shaking. But I had gained some confidence. I was not where I was to where I reached. I think it was a lot of progress in my own self, and I think that is what is more important. So if somebody told me 10 years back to come here and speak, I would have never agreed. Never, never agreed. But today, I am standing here. That itself is a huge, huge success for me, because coming here and talking is something that I would have never thought doing. And so when I kind of, so even in my professional life, I started seeing a lot of progress, because, you know, like I reached, of course, with age, you kind of reach the top of the ladder. And when you are at the top, you have to kind of present. You know, you can't shrug your responsibilities. So like I told you in the earlier part, that I never used to like giving presentations. I would prefer that my team member gives, but I won't give. But I started, after that video episode, even my corporate world, I started seeing. So I had started accepting the way I am. The reason I did not ask any of you is my voice sounding weird, because if in a normal circumstance, if I would have started, I would have asked all of you, is my voice sounding weird today? But I'm not conscious about it. Of course I am, because I'm asking you now, but, but I think I have kind of evolved. So that is what I want to talk about, and I think I wanted to bring this story to everyone, that, you know, it's very important to accept your flaws, because I remember one more instance that I would like to talk about is, I went to an ENT specialist when I was in college, and I asked him, can you get my voice operated? You know, I want a husky voice, and I want a voice like I would sound something very different. And he was like, are you mad? What are you talking? You have a normal voice. And he gave me some vocal exercises, and at that time I thought, oh, I'm in college, I can't afford it. Now that's why he made such an excuse. When I start earning, I'll get myself operated, and I'll have a fancy voice, and I'll go and speak. Because I get very attracted to people who speak in the radio and people. So I used to find it very fancy. Oh my God, his voice is so good. So I still get attracted by people who have great voices. But yeah, this journey has been very, very rewarding. I have accepted myself. And before I wrap up this speech, I would like to tell all of you, especially the kids out here, guys, please accept your body. I was reading a note somewhere where it was said that 96% women specifically have issues with their bodies. And between the age group of 13 to 30, something or the other they don't like about their body. And it is there within. So all I would want to say, especially the kids here, guys, please accept your body. Everybody has flaws, but it is, you know, it's a very difficult journey, but it's not impossible. It's very rewarding. Trust me, if you can like your body the way it is, you can like everything about your body, it's a very rewarding journey. So start loving your body, start accepting it. Go and face your fears. You may fail. I don't know if I've spoken well, I don't know if I've spoken how I have spoken, but I have accepted my fear. So therefore I started up. My biggest fear is to stand here on stage and talk amongst all of you. I think I've done it, so I'm feeling amazing. So yeah, so please accept your fears, please go ahead and fight it, start loving your body, accepting it, and that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that enlightening talk, Ms. Madhurima. If I can invite you back on stage for the question and answer session.
Are there any questions, guys? Anybody here?
You are great, so no questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so I think I was very good. So I will assume that I was very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please welcome our second speaker, Mr. Gautam Acharya. Mr. Gautam Acharya is an aviation maven who has specialized in commercial aviation for the past 20 plus years. He is qualified to practice law in India and the UK after obtaining a Master of Law degree specialized in air and space laws from McGill University in 2005. His work experience spans 3 continents, having worked in Canada, the UK, Sweden, Hong Kong, and India. He has been working with the Jet Airways since 2008 and has managed multiple portfolios ranging from aviation, leasing and contracts to regulatory affairs and law. Over the last 4 years, he has worked closely with the court-appointed administrator and has been pivotal to help Jet Airways successfully emerge as a corporate insolvency resolution process. His assiduous efforts are now in the direction of getting Jet Airways off the ground, like the metaphorical phoenix. Please welcome Mr. Gautam Acharya.
Hi everyone, good evening. Simple question to start with. Can you imagine what happens to an aircraft when it runs out of fuel? It's an easy one, it didn't tax your imagination too much. The result can be catastrophic when the aircraft is flying, but when the aircraft is on the ground, obviously the consequences are not so severe. I'm not here to talk about what happens when the aeroplane runs out of fuel. I'm here to talk about what happens to an aeroplane when the company that it is with runs out of money. Money to buy fuel, money to operate the airline, money to do just about everything. All of these phrases that I've told you, where you need the money and that money runs out, takes you to this concept in law called insolvency. When a company runs out of money to operate its business, under law, it's deemed insolvent. People can also go insolvent. Not when you go out for coffee and you don't have money in your pocket, you're not insolvent. So let's just clarify that. But when an airline or when a company runs out of money to keep its company, to keep its aircraft flying, to keep the company going, it's deemed insolvent. What happens to the aircraft then that the company has? What happens to the airline? What happens to all the people? The consequences are quite severe. A lot of you have felt it or may feel it, and I hope you're not going to feel it too hard. But before I get there, the common word that most people use for insolvency is bankruptcy or being bankrupt. So I'll be using the terms insolvent and bankrupt interchangeably, but they mean the same thing. Now, let's go a little forward and talk about how an airline essentially gets aircraft for it to operate. Because without the aircraft, an airline is nothing. It could be anything else. It is the most vital ingredient of that corporation that makes it an airline. The aircraft is this cylindrical metallic tube which has wings on either side, which are propelled with a propulsion system, an engine or propellers, which help it stay above the ground and traverse distances. These cylindrical tubes are not cheap. You can't order them on Amazon, certainly not on Flipkart. You have to go to the manufacturer. You have the Boeings, you have the Airbuses, you have the ATRs, Embraers. These are the big manufacturers of aircraft that an airline typically reaches out to saying, we'd like to order some of your aircraft for us to operate. You might have read in the news that Air India has gone and placed an order for 490 aircraft. Indigo did 10 better by going up to 500. Akasa Air, which is a new airline, is planning to order, has already ordered 76 aircraft and are planning another triple-digit order of aircraft. But paying for these aircraft is not cheap. The corporation does not have that kind of money in its pocket to go and make the down payment saying, here you go, I'm going to pay for the 500 aircraft at one go, or I'm going to pay the first installment. So what airlines typically do, and this is a practice not just in India but all over the world, is that they reach out to leasing companies. And leasing companies, believe me, have very deep pockets. They are backed by banks, they are backed by financial institutions, private equity houses, what have you, who have the kind of money that's required to go out and acquire these assets. These leasing companies place bulk orders with the manufacturer where they end up getting an order book of 100, 200, 300 aircraft, and then the job is to go out and place these aircraft in the market. So typically what airlines that are not capable of buying these aircraft themselves end up doing is they lease these aircraft. Very, very similar to you leasing an apartment if you're not going to buy that apartment. You pay a monthly lease rent, you have a fixed term, and at the end of the term, if you're going to extend the lease, you extend it either on revised lease terms, revised lease rent, or at the same terms that were continuing. But typically there is an escalation, as you might have experienced in the house leases that you have. When an airline runs out of money, the first thing that happens to the aircraft, which aren't owned by the airline itself, and which are owned by these leasing companies, they get repossessed. Now what does repossession mean? If it was your aircraft and you had given it to me, and I was insolvent at the end of it, you would want to take your asset back because each of these assets costs a lot of money, as I told you a few moments ago. You'd want to secure your asset, you'd want to get it out of the jurisdiction where that insolvency has taken place, and you would start taking steps to ensure that your asset is protected, because once you get that asset back, you can go and give it to someone else and start earning lease rent on it because you've already spent a lot of money on that aircraft. In recent times, India has witnessed, over the span of the last 5 years, 2 airline insolvencies. The Indian insolvency law is not a very old law. It came about in the year 2016. There was an earlier version of it. I'm not going to trouble you with what the law says, but it's just that it never got tested or tried on an airline company. It's been tried on a steel factory, on a sugar factory, on a cement mill and whatnot. And in all of those cases, the assets that that company had are all fixed assets. They're not movable assets like an aircraft. So it's very easy in an insolvency situation for those kind of companies, for the law to operate, for the people who are owed the money to go in and stake a claim on that asset. But with an aircraft, what do? It's a movable asset. The aircraft could have gone from, say, India, if it's an Indian airline. It's, say, in the UK when the insolvency breaks out. The aircraft can't take off from there because the company does not have money to fuel the aircraft to bring it back. The aircraft is stuck there. What do you do then? These challenges, these complexities are what the Indian regulators, the Indian banks, the Indian lawmakers, everyone who sits in this aviation ecosystem who has an interest in that movable asset was forced to confront 4 years ago when the first insolvency in India was Jet Airways. I'm not going back to Kingfisher because at that point in time the law did not exist, this insolvency code which came about in 2016. And more recently, in May of this year, when Go Air voluntarily went to the courts and said, I have no more money, I cannot operate, I'm grounding my entire fleet. The aircraft are just parked there. Those of you who are flying would have felt the pain in the years or the months shortly after the airline grounded. Airfares went through the roof because simple economics. Demand is high, supply suddenly collapsed, prices go up. People are left without a job. The entire ecosystem that sits around that airline, the guy who supplied bottles of water to that airline, the guy who was the catering company, the airport, the navigation service provider, everyone was suddenly left without an institution that they were earlier feeding into from which they were deriving their revenues. Coming back to the aircraft that need to get repossessed, which don't belong to the airline, what ends up happening in a typical scenario is the leasing company or the lessor then has to come to the location where the aircraft has been grounded and take steps to ensure that their asset is protected, repossessed, and taken back to a jurisdiction where they have a little more control over things. Typically, most lessors that Indian airlines deal with are Irish. And the reason they do that is because India and Ireland have a favorable tax treaty, as a result of which when you pay that lease rent to that Irish company, the incidence of withholding tax does not get attracted. So it's in your interest to ensure that you lease from an Irish entity. So these leasing companies would want to take their aircraft back to Ireland or some other favorable jurisdiction where they can control the asset that is theirs, where they can ensure that they can, let's assume there's a lot of wear and tear on the asset, they can ensure that it's all fixed, it's repaired, because do realize when the insolvency of an airline took place and because the airline was running out of money, the airline typically could have cut corners. It might not have done a maintenance job. It may have said, you know, it's okay if the seats are torn, we're not going to fix the seats. The overhead bin handle has broken, we're not going to fix that right now. It's more important for us to keep the asset flying because these are small things that don't matter. So these are things that the leasing company then needs to fix before they can go out and offer the aircraft to someone else to take on similar terms. Because put yourself in the shoes of a lessee, a person who's going to acquire the asset. Similar to a house that you're going to step into for the first time on lease, you'll tell the landlord, can you please fix all the door handles? Can you ensure that there's a lick of paint on the walls? Can you ensure that there's pest control that's done? You're not going to take it the way the last person gave it to you. So there's a lot of cost that the leasing company has to incur to ensure that once this aircraft has been repossessed, it's brought to a condition where it can be made worthy to give to someone else. There is another category of repossessions that take place. And the word repossession here is not entirely accurate. This arises in a situation where the airline by itself owns the aircraft. Let's say for whatever reason the airline has had an opportunity to pay the entire amount and acquire the aircraft. Then what happens is, obviously that aircraft belongs to the airline that has gone bankrupt. There are people that are owed money, and what do? They go to the court and say, look, this company owes me X amount of money. They have this asset sitting with them which costs X plus Y. We would like to stake a claim on it, and they seek to impound that aircraft so that they can then sell it and recover their dues. From personal experience, in Jet Airways, we had one such aircraft of ours that was arrested in Amsterdam. Those of you who happen to see the Instagram post of this talk, you might have seen a photograph of me, and if you've not seen me, that's fine. But the aircraft that's featured behind me was that very aircraft that was arrested in Amsterdam by certain people in Europe who were owed money by Jet Airways. They were not paid the money. So what they went and did is, they approached the courts in Amsterdam, in Holland, and they said that this company owes me money, they are not paying me the money, they have this asset which is theirs, please arrest it. So that aircraft was not allowed to fly back to India in April of 2019 for the airline to kind of keep all its aircraft in one place and then do something about it. That aircraft was eventually sold by the administrator or the caretaker that was appointed by the court to manage the assets of this insolvent company to recover the dues of the entity that was owed money. Let me flash forward a bit. Where do we stand now in the various insolvency processes that are running? And right now in India, you have the Jet Airways insolvency and the Go Air insolvency. The court typically appoints a caretaker to try and ensure that there is no further erosion or dilution of the value of the assets of the enterprise. And in an airline's case, the only asset that it has is an aircraft. Its people would have left. It may have some furniture, fixtures, some laptops, computers, all of it count for nothing. The only thing that has value are the aircraft that the airline owns, because the aircraft that the airline leased would have been repossessed. Those are not its to speak of. In Go Air's case, none of the aircraft that Go Air has belong to Go Air. They all belong to lessors, and the lessors are, as we speak right now, going through the labyrinth of the Indian court system to get the relief so that they can take their aircraft back. One cost that I failed to mention earlier, which a lessor typically needs to incur to free its aircraft from the clutches of the legal system for it to take it back, are to pay off all the dues that that aircraft would have incurred, the parking charges, because the aircraft's been sitting on the ground at, say, Bombay Airport or Hyderabad Airport. Who's going to pay for it? These things don't come free or cheap. You've got to pay for the fuel to take the aircraft out. You've got to ensure that you have the manpower to take the aircraft, and because you've not got all this in place, and because you're going to do it with very little lead time, the costs that you're going to incur are going to be very high. Most importantly, there are costs that you will incur to make the aircraft airworthy, make the aircraft fit to fly, because chances are it's been sitting on the ground for so many months now, exposed to the sun, the rain, the cold. It's a harsh environment, it's a harsh climate. It's not easy on these big metallic birds that start to rust. You need to ensure that you do all of that repair work before that aircraft is allowed to fly again. And then, of course, there are those charges that that aircraft would have attracted in the years, in the months leading up to the insolvency. Say a landing or a parking charge, a navigation charge, and other any other charges that the aircraft might have not, the airline might not have paid on the aircraft. You need to get the insurance up for it so that you can ferry the aircraft. So all of these are big ticket items for a leasing company for them to kind of wrap their heads around before they repossess their aircraft. The law is evolving in India. As we speak right now, there has been the birth of a new airline, Akasa Air, which happened in 2022. So while you saw a -2, no Jet Airways, no Go Air, you became a +1 with another airline. So things are not all gloom and doom as I'm painting them out to be. Yes, it's difficult for you and me when our holidays get cancelled at the last minute, when the flight is cancelled. You may, in social gatherings, say, hey guys, what are you doing for Christmas or New Year? Airfares are too high, we can't go anywhere. If the other airline was here, we'd get a cheap ticket. Some of these airlines were operating to places where they had a monopoly. So I understand Go Air was the only airline that was flying between some place in North India and here, Leh, if I'm not mistaken. And when that airline goes away, what do you do with the traffic that wants to travel between those two city points? These are the pain points that you and I as passengers face, also with the airfares going up. But there will be a correction eventually, because as economics will dictate, there will be supply that will soon come about to meet the demand, and as a result of which the balancing forces of the price coming down will benefit all of us. On the legal front, the law is evolving. The Indian lawmakers, the Indian courts, the Indian banks who have lost money have now had an opportunity to have their heads wrapped around two such cases. So there is precedent. You know what to do. At this point in time, of course, Jet Airways has found a suitable bidder who found or sees value in the enterprise, saying, I'm willing to take it over and restart it. There are hurdles. You need to get aircraft. You need to start life afresh. So you need to start again by getting aircraft, getting slots at airports, manpower, get your pilots trained, get your certificates and licenses in place. And all of this takes time. It's not Maggie noodles. It's not going to happen in 2 minutes or 2 days or 2 weeks. It's likely to take longer. All I can request is for people to be patient, because sunny days will be here again. Thank you very much.
This talk surely introduced us to several new avenues. Do we have any questions on the floor? Yes, ma'am. Just a second, ma'am. The mic.
If you could briefly explain why a company goes insolvent. I wasn't keeping up with it.
So the reason why companies typically go insolvent is because they end up spending more money than the money that they earn. So, in the case of an airline, if you're going to offer a throwaway price of, say, 999 rupees for a ticket from Bombay to Bangalore, for example, but you're going to offer the passenger a meal on that aircraft, and that meal costs, say, 150 rupees or 100 rupees. You're going to offer them frequent flyer points. You're going to give them lounge access. You're going to give them this, that, and the other. What is the airline going to make? So in an airline's case, the airline goes insolvent because the amount that they are able to command in terms of a ticket price does not match the amount that they need to spend to keep that operation going. Yes, as you come closer to, say, a peak travel season, Christmas, Diwali, New Year, whatever, fares go through the roof, but that is a very short-term bump in airfares, in the revenue that the airline will earn. But for the rest of the year, let's say in the month of July, if you want to fly from Bombay to Bangalore, you're going to find airfares very, very suppressed, very cheap. Why is that? Because people are back at school, people don't want to travel during the monsoons, they've done their summer holiday, new academic year has started, things at work are picking up, you need to set your annual targets. So because the airline would want to incite travel, they'll drop the fares. And those fares are not going to be commensurate with what they need to spend to keep things going. So this will eventually catch up with you. And at some point in time, you're going to run out of the money because you're going to be paying for it out of your own pocket. And at some time, that money in your pocket's going to dry up. I hope that answers.
One more question, if you're all right with that. Then, if suppose the leasing company, if the aircraft that was leased out from them has been damaged by the company that was renting it out, how come there is no debt incurred for the damages done?
So there is an amount that the bankrupt airline owes the leasing company. But it just sit on the books as a claim that the leasing company will make against the airline. The bankrupt airline has no means to pay it. So unfortunately, that airline, the leasing company will have to shell out the money out of its own pocket to make good that aircraft before it can fly again and they can do something with it.
So Jet Airways still owes them, like the new bidder?
So if you go to the Jet Airways website, if you go to the Go Air website, you have what is called a list of creditors. And you'll see that the caretaker, in law he's called the resolution professional. But I'm going to call him caretaker because that's essentially what the person is doing before it's handed over to the new owners. So the caretaker or the resolution professional invites claims from everyone who is owed money by the bankrupt airline, saying, you please submit documents and prove to me how much the company owes you. And we will then publicize that list so that come tomorrow, in the exceedingly optimistic circumstance that when we sell whatever assets we have, if we can recover all this money, we know who gets how much. But the sad reality is that that's never going to happen because the assets that enterprise has and the debt that it has built up, the gulf cannot be bridged. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, thank you.
So my question is, especially for like say Jet Airways, they didn't own any of these aircrafts, right? They were all stuff that they'd taken on lease. Now my point is that they're not their assets. If they're taken
Let
on
me just
lease.
Let me just stop you there.
Yeah.
We owned 12 aircraft. So the 12 aircraft, the aircraft that you see sitting around are aircraft that Jet Airways actually owns.
Okay.
We are the owners of the aircraft. Thankfully, they were not parked elsewhere where someone else could repossess them. The remaining, I would like to say 110 aircraft were all leased aircraft which were repossessed shortly after the airline grounded in April 19.
Okay. So what I wanted to understand was the ones that they've leased out anyway, are not their assets, right? So why does the law make it so difficult for people who are trying to claim, I'm paying rent for it every month or annually or whatever. I'm assuming that's the way it functions.
It should function.
It should function. So why does the law make it so difficult for my house owner to repossess his own house? Because that's not my asset. So one, that. And second is just an extension of what you said, that there are disruptions, right? When someone goes bankrupt, and in this case we've had two, and they've led to massive disruptions, right? In this case, would you bat for, and I know that public ownership of aircrafts haven't, or the airline business haven't really worked well, but would you bat for probably a public-private owner partnership in this case? Because these are undertakings that, these are market circumstances, and a private company doesn't or may not see enough opportunity to jump in immediately. So someone has to bridge that gap. So would you probably bat for a better managed public-private partnership?
So to answer your first question first, I don't know. You need to ask the lawmaker why they make life so difficult. I'm not the lawmaker. I'm not the lawmaker. My personal view is that enforcing any law in India is a frustrating experience. If you're a landlord and you try to evict your tenant, if you have a motor vehicle accident and you go to court to try and claim compensation, it is a frustrating exercise. And that unfortunately is a reality that I have faced.
I'm sorry, sir. I think we won't be taking any more questions.
We can take things offline. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing new things. These words perfectly encapsulate the qualities of our next speaker. Please welcome Chef Anil Rohira. Sir. Sir is a renowned culinary expert with a penchant for pastries. He is a corporate pastry chef, Fetchland, Switzerland, and the co-founder of the School for European Pastry, Mumbai, Delhi. He was awarded India's top 10 culinary experts by Best of Biz Awards and Chocolatier of the Year by Food. He was a judge at FHA Singapore, Food Show Gulf Dubai, and Pastry Live Atlanta. He was also awarded as one of India's 25 biggest chefs. Chef Rohira was featured in the Italian magazine Pasticceria International and won Pastry Chef of the Year at WICA India. Sir, we welcome you on stage.
Good evening, everybody. How are you all doing? It's a pleasure to be here at JNS. Thank you for hosting this and privileged to be here. I'm familiar with this room because I've been sitting there a couple of years as a parent. My girls are in the school here, so it's wonderful to be back here. Talking about school, I loved being a student at school. Schooling years were probably the best years, probably of all our lives, right? The friendships that we made, the musty that we did. I love school because, especially the time before and after class hours, I was kind of disconnected in the class. I couldn't really get a grip on the sciences or the maths or the social studies or the literature, almost all subjects. My academic aspirations were not to finish last in class. That's all I went for. Those were my goals. And it was tough competition between me and my friend. मेरे को तेरे से 1 mark ज़्यादा मिला. Right? So as long as I cleared, I was very happy. But back then, if you were not academically inclined, you fast ran out of career options. Obviously, medicine, engineering, and all were totally far-fetched. So I didn't know what to do. And I was reaching that point in life where I had to find a source to make a livelihood. So a friend of mine was going to catering college. I said, "Chal, I'm going to come with you. I'm going to extend my student life." So I get into catering college. He didn't get in. So I find myself in hotel management. And I go through the first year. In the first year, we have subjects like food and beverage service. We have basic training, kitchen skills development. We have housekeeping. And I find that I'm starting to enjoy this process of learning that is more hands-on, that is more interactive. It's a bit of social element involved. We are talking to people while you're working. And I suddenly found myself enjoying the learning process, which I kind of was disconnected in school with. And during this first year of hotel management, every time I walked by the pastry shop, I was very intrigued with the aromas, the visuals, and we were sent on industrial training, industrial exposure, for you to go and see what the industry is all about, get a feel of what your future would be, to get a feel of what department you might be interested in. So I remember clearly it was this month, December to Jan, the training was for a month. I got into the hotel and I requested the chef, can I go into food production, which is the kitchen area. And because it's season time now, Christmas is just around the corner, so he puts me into the pastry shop. And I clearly remember pushing open the doors, this nice air conditioning breeze coming in, people glazing eclairs, the aromas of baked products. This is my life. This is where I belong. So I get it. I didn't know much about baking then because I was still in the first year. So I get in there, and because it's season, of course, the working hours are long, but it was tiring. I never felt I was tired. And then I was very intrigued with what was going on. Eclairs being baked. When you mix butter, sugar, egg, and flour, you end up with a cookie. The same ingredients could result in a cake. I'm like, what is going on? And when it's so technical and it's so scientific, science, remember, I was not a big fan of when I was in school. But suddenly, I started getting intrigued by the science of baking and pastry. So I find myself on the streets of Churchgate Station, these book vendors outside. Sorry guys, there was no Instagram then. Students, 3-year generation, right? So there was no Instagram, and so we had to go out to Churchgate. I should start getting books on baking and pastry and getting involved on reading and researching and asking everybody I knew in the industry questions on why is this happening, or what is the reaction when you mix these ingredients, what's happening in the oven, what is the effect of heat on protein, on starches, on gelatinization. Science, again, was not my favorite subject, but suddenly things had changed. I started enjoying the science of baking pastry. I started enjoying the learning process. It was not classroom oriented. Okay, how many of you guys kind of find yourself not too inclined in the classroom? The teachers are around here, they're watching you. I'm kidding. But okay, good. So don't stress out, okay? So I enjoyed this learning process and the intricacies of baking and pastry and chocolate. So when I graduated, obviously I went into the baking industry, but I felt this quest to learn more. What I knew was not enough. So I decided I'm going to go abroad. So I went abroad. I studied baking and pastry further for 2 years. Still not too happy, but enough to get a job. I wanted to learn more. Once I went abroad to learn, I realized the depth of knowledge and information, and probably retains or applies to any field. It was seamless. It had no border. It was so wide. So I continued the learning, continued the studying on my own. And that's when you realize that one lifetime is just not enough for me to know everything about baking and pastry. If I were to live for 200 years, I would be doing the same thing that I do. Continue to study, continue to research, continue to develop. So I felt that this is just an endless process of learning that I detested when I was in school. So I come out, I continue the learning, I continue working, and I felt that I need to learn more, and I felt the best way to learn was to be competitive. So I started the competitions. You know, you have regionals and you have state level competitions back in the US, and then you have the national level competitions. So I thought, after a few years of competing locally, I thought, let me try the US nationals. So I enrolled for it. You do the nationals so that you get into the US team to represent United States at the International Pastry World Cup. Just like we have the Cricket World Cup, guys, we have a Pastry World Cup. So I enrolled myself to compete at the national level in the United States. And guys, this is a very serious competition. It's probably the toughest one back then. A one-person job, you got to go in and work for 9 hours and you put out bunch of products, and everything is timed. Every 3-4 hours they'll ask you, give me your cake, give me your petit gâteau, give me your ice cream dessert, give me your showpiece, and then finally you've got to put out a whole display, and you're alone, you're working alone. Anyway, it's a tough competition, and you practice. I practiced for a whole year, no days off, you work hard, but I mean, it may sound like a lot, but it didn't feel like anything because I was so vested, so involved, so committed to the process, it didn't feel like work. So I get into this event, I register for it, I go for the competition. I'm probably 1/3 into the event, the competition, and you are supposed to make this sculpture made out of chocolate and sugar. And I make this, and while I'm doing something else, for some strange reason, this structure that's probably 30-40% ready comes down crashing. It just shatters. And it's all over the table. It's on the floor. 1 year of hard work. Stay with this moment, guys. You work 1 year, you put away everything in your life, not taking a day off. You practice for this, day in and out, and this thing is on the floor, shattered in front of you. What is going through your mind? It's like a brain freeze. My heart fell. It was like I was sinking. My brain was frozen. I couldn't think. I couldn't even see probably. There's sweat dripping down my back. And I'm thinking, why the hell do I have to do this? I had a good job, life was going well. Why do I need to put myself in this situation where I'm experiencing this right now? And what do I need to do? Of course, there are international judges. They're walking all around. You get marks for cleanliness and how organized you work. So, do I quit here now and say, okay, I just had a bad day? I said, you know what, I'm in the process. I'm probably 30-40% done. Let me just finish the best I can. So I asked the assistant, can I get a broom? I remember that moment, guys. I get a broom and a pan, and I'm sweeping the shadows that's all around my table and on the floor. I clean the floor, clean my table, put all the shards away, and I just put my head down and just continue working. Luckily, during practice sessions, you factor for some uncertainties like this, but it never, ever happened during the practice session. But it happened on the final day. So anyway, I had some spare time. I did the best I could. My food went out on time. Luckily, your display piece had to go out at the very end for your final display. I managed to put it together. I put my display out, and it all went well. Of course, I had a few prayers in between. See me through this, and I'll be the best guy ever. I won't do anything wrong. And it worked. So I put out the display, and I did really well. And I represented the United States as team captain for the United States for the 2003 World Cup. Was how I. Now, thank you. But this is not about that. What I want you folks, especially the students here, to take away from this is that moment where everything came down crashing. If there's one thing that you should remember is do not be afraid of failure. Do not be afraid to fail. Because if you don't put yourself through that, there will be no growth, there will be no learning, right? So taking these learnings into the next event was the World Cup. So you're practicing now for the World Cup, and it's a 3-member team. You represent the United States for the pastry World Cup. And there are 24 countries competing, so it's more intense. And now you realize, so the learning was not just about the science of baking and pastry or the skills development. The learning was also about yourself, about knowing yourself, of how much you can push yourself, how will you feel when things don't go your way, what do you need to do in adversity. And so for me, that phase was 2-3 years when I learned about myself, about my fears, about my limitations, about my ability to work with people, and you have to push every aspect of this. And your life will be challenging. It's not going to be easy, but do not shy away. Do not be down. Even the best have failed. So remember the example of this broom, okay? Yeah, you've got to put your things together and start all over again. So anyway, we did that. We went for the competitions. We did well there too. Now, the learning from all this is that 35 years ago when I started, baking and pastry was not considered a career choice. Okay, it was, people in my family were very concerned. Was chef banke hotel mein khana banayega, koi shaadi nahi karega. Right? That was the first thing, was nobody's going to get married to you. But luckily, all that happened. I got to be a chef. I got married to a most incredible lady. She's right here. So today now, in the few months or years, you folks will be faced with making a career decision. And sitting where you are, or even where your parents are, it's going to be very hard to tell what unfolds 20, 30 years from now. I want to just make a request that if you have an inclination towards any subject or anything, you must pursue that fearlessly. You're too young to be confined right now. Just explore. Please be free. Be fearless, and even the smallest interest you have in something, commit yourself, go in there and learn. However off it may sound to you today, if you're committed to the process, if you're ready to submit yourself and embrace what that particular field has to offer, you will succeed, my guarantee. Okay? So don't undermine yourself and don't undermine your abilities. The last thing here is, during the course, the most important thing that I learned is to be humble and to be grateful. Because where the industry was 35 years ago and where we are today, and what the next generation of pastry chefs or chefs in this country will bring, is going to be amazing. And it is not academically inclined. Academics and learning could go hand in hand, or you could learn even if you're not academically inclined, and that was me back then when I started. If you have any baking questions, I'm ready to take them now. Well, I just got it for the guys here, so they're enjoying it back here. That's why you're so quiet, right?
I think we devoured it before.
I knew it.
Gets a chance.
I knew it that I cannot be. First question that I'll be asked is, what's your favorite dish? And did you get some for us? Anybody has that question? All of us. Okay. All of you. I do have some chocolates, but that is subjective to the applause I get after I finish my talk. I'm kidding.
Do we have any more questions?
Seriously, any questions? Yeah, please. I mean, I think it would be very nice if he or she starts with taking short courses and learning things the right way. I think, like anything else, I think the technique, and we always say it's about the heart, head, and hands when it comes to baking and pastry. You must have the feeling, the passion that you want to do it, and then it's the intellect, baking and pastry, and then it's the skill sets. So mainly people focus just on the skill sets. I want a recipe. The recipe says mix this, and I'll get an outcome. But that's the last step. That's not how baking works. Baking works with the science and the intellect about what happens when you mix things. What is the science behind it? So there's a school or a short course you can take. I think that would be the first step. So.
That's a pretty good advice for the kids, but what's your point of view on the education system inside?
Yeah, brilliant question. I think that the educational system has evolved since when probably I was at school or you folks were in school. And I'm very encouraged with the diversity that schools offer now. I would just hope that cooking and culinary or baking and pastry becomes a part of the curriculum, because if nothing else, these are life skills. This is going to take you through life. So you can't go wrong if you don't know how to cook or bake. I think at least a small amount of it should be incorporated in the program, in the schooling. A little bit of finance, a little bit of cooking, and I mean these are life skills that should be incorporated in the curriculum.
Yeah, good evening. This career, how much scope does it have in India or abroad?
The scope?
Yeah.
Like baking and pastry?
Yes. Does
Great.
it have a good scope in India or abroad is a better
Yeah.
choice?
I mean, career counselor, right? I was sitting next to you. Yeah. So folks, it's an excellent question. You know, when I started, I had no idea where this is going to take me. All I wanted to do was excel in this field. If somebody anywhere in the world can make something, why can't I? I just have to be committed to that process, right? So in terms of scope, it's very difficult to say. I work for a Swiss chocolate company, Valal. So we have a school here in Mumbai. But 30 years ago, I had no clue that I could end up with a corporate job with a very exclusive European company manufacturing chocolate. I had no clue. Nobody would even guess that would be a career opportunity. But this all came as you progress. So you have to be sustainable in whatever you do. Very right. I mean, you've got to make money. But if your focus is growth and learning and development, the rest will fall in place. I'm telling you, at least that's my life experience. I never have applied for a job, ever.
So I get students and they ask me whether they should pursue it in India or go abroad. So what's your suggestion?
No, I think, and that's the reason, I mean, I should say, there are very good schools here in India. I happen to be one of them, part of one of them. But I think the opportunities here in India are great right now. Far, far more. Look at the amount of restaurants and cafes, and you're starting to go out for dinner because you know a specific chef is running a specific operation. Earlier it was just premises oriented. You had a hotel or a brand name that you used to go and go there because that. Today you go in because who's cooking behind the line, or who's doing your desserts, or who's the person behind your food. It's only going to get better. Good?
Thank you, sir, for the
Thanks
talk.
for your time. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. We will now proceed for the interval. Kindly reassemble back here in 15 minutes to witness an extraordinary dance performance by our very talented students.
request your silence. Thank you. Dance is a universal language that transcends borders, a rhythmic expression of the soul that weaves together threads of culture, tradition, and human connection. Please welcome our in-house dance troupe, Nritya Sangam, as they showcase a mesmerizing fusion of Indian classical and folk dance forms.
In every step, you spoke volumes, turning moments into a dance of magic. Thank you for the mesmerizing performance. Our next speaker is Mr. Kiran Bhatt. Mr. Kiran Bhatt is an Indian-American author, traveler, and polyglot. He is widely known as the author of the story cycle, We of the Forsaken World, the world-traveling web serialization, Girar, and the multilingual poetry anthology, Speaking in Tongues. He has published books in 5 other languages and has had his writing published in journals such as The Caravan, Outlook India, Sahitya Akademi, The Kenyan Review, Prairie Schooner, The Brooklyn Rail, The Colorado Review, 3 AM Magazine, Cordite Poetry Review, Soft Blow, and many other places. He has been to 150 countries, lived in 25 cities in the world, and speaks 12 languages, but currently lives in Mumbai, where he is the co-chair of the Environmental Sustainability Subcommittee of the Global Indian Council. Please welcome Mr. Kiran Bhatt.
Hello. Everyone can hear me now, correct? Yeah, I think so. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for the lovely JNS Youth for having me for this TEDx talk. My name is Kiran Bhatt. I'm an Indian-American polyglot, novelist, and poet. And I'm here to talk today about what it means to think beyond the boundary of the border. The Oxford Dictionary defines the border in the following way. First, a border is a line demarcating 2 nations, political entities, or administrative divisions. Normally, when we think of a border, we think of the border, say, between India and Pakistan, or Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. We think of 2 separate political identities. On one side is this space, on the other side is that space. The Oxford Dictionary also defines a border in the following way. A border is a boundary or edge around something. Without us ever thinking about it, we're always creating borders and all the time. We're thinking about the border between this chair and the floor, between the tree and the air, between the grass and the building, between my physical body and the outside world. We are creating borders because it's also necessary for our human survival. As little children, as little babies, you see little boys hitting themselves with their toys, hitting themselves with their pudding or whatever they're eating. That's because they're physically not able to understand, this is me and this is the outside. They're learning that by hitting themselves with their objects or trying to put things in their mouth or in their nose. We also see little children yell and shout, this is mine, every time a person even comes close to their favorite toy. That is because they're creating identity. They're creating an idea of this is what belongs to me. This is what I identify with. This is not what another person can have. This only belongs to me. Even though we create borders for our survival, we also create borders with ego and with identity. We put ourselves first and foremost as the existence of this world because that is what we're born and brought up with. We see ourselves first and foremost with these eyes, after all. But then we slowly start to create a bigger world around that. We start to say, this is what I have. This is what this other person cannot have. This is my ethnic identity. I'm a Hindu person. I'm not this type of person. I'm male or female. I'm not this type of person. And we start to create borders around people based on what they are and what they aren't. What we identify with and what others happen to be. Again, this is a very natural and normal thing. We do it for survival as well. We grew up many, many thousands of years ago in tribes, and we had to forage for food in small communities, and we had to make sure that whatever our community had could remain there. Otherwise, the people we loved could be violated by outsiders, taken by outsiders, or resources could be taken. And so there was that fear that anyone who's outside of this line could take what belongs to us. So a lot of these things come from a natural place, but sometimes the consequences of these things lead to exclusion, discrimination, and treating people as different because of how we identify ourselves and how others identify themselves. I'm someone who is made aware of the fact that people create these boundaries and borders from an extremely early age. I grew up in the United States to a family who immigrated from southern India. And the way that the US was in the 90s and 2000s when I started living there was a little different. People had this idea you had to speak in a certain way, you had to vote in a certain way, you had to believe in certain things. And if you were not able to do that, you could be excluded or treated as different. Conversely, my parents grew up with a very particular culture that was different as well. They had a certain idea of how we should speak, how we should behave, how people should interact. And while they wouldn't exclude me because I'm their son, there was still this idea that if I do not fall into a certain parameter of how people behave, I could also risk being excluded by other people. These were often things that were contradictory. What some Americans would teach and what Indians would teach would usually be completely different. Let me give some examples. For example, in Indian culture, when one eats, one is supposed to finish the entire plate, no matter how full or hungry you are. You cannot waste food. In American culture, we had a family that helped take care of my parents were very busy with their practice. And there would be a family that would take care of me after school who happened to be Polish background and American background. And they would tell me, okay, Kiran, if you're full, just finish up to the amount you're finished and then leave the rest. You know, just finish up to here, put your plate to the side, politely say I'm full, and then the rest can be chucked in the waste bin. So it's a completely different idea of how we should eat. Conversely, that same couple. So again, in Indian culture, people do not give personal space. You know, people tend to cling and crunch themselves together, even if there is space. Americans, on the other hand, stand apart. So for example, I was on that swing with that same older gentleman, and I was a little boy, I was like 5 or 6, and I was crouching into him on the swing. It was one of these wooden swings. And he pushed me a little to the side and said, you have to create this amount of space between yourself and me. Because I was violating a sense of personal space. He had to have this amount of space between himself and myself, and that would be proper conduct or norm. So again, what often my family would teach and what the outside society would teach would not only be completely different, but contradictory, which resulted in what a lot of ABCDs also called confusion. Because you're taught two completely different things that are actually completely different. So for some people that causes lifelong confusion, and it naturally would. But for me, it also taught me an interesting paradox. That for what one society says this is everything that belongs and this is everything that does not belong, another society will look at that same thing and say this is everything that does belong and that's everything that doesn't belong. And that's a paradox. Because one type of human is looking at this and giving it all this value, but another person of another background is looking at all this and giving it a completely different value. So I realized innately that these things were contradictory. Another thing made me realize that I was innately different. I happened to be gay. Now, in the 90s, 2000s, being an LGBTQI person in any part of the world was really difficult, especially in the US South, but any part of the world, 90s, 2000s was not the best time to be a sexual minority. But I think I subliminally realized that whatever I was, whatever I felt, was not in the norm of how men should behave, and that I would face exclusion from the idea of what manhood or masculinity could be because of the idea of what sexual orientation ought to mean. So there were two sorts of things that made me realize that based on something that was out of my control, out of what I just happened to be, I would be put outside of the border. And I would always be seen as the person that people would exclude, harass, make fun of, outside of my control because I just happened to be in the spot where other people would not want me to be. I started traveling, you know, I'm very grateful. I left Georgia in the 90s, 2000s. I left, I traveled, and I went to Spain. I realized also again in Spain, everything I was taught from say a South Indian background or an American background was useless, again, useless. Everything that the Spanish believed in was also, again, completely different from what these people believed in. And I had this realization: I want to write, I want to travel, I want to live all over the world. I want to write, assuming that none of these things had to matter, that I could create novels or poems or stories that spoke to a global condition, that spoke to any human of any origin or any way of thinking, no matter how they identified on this planet. So I knew that in order to create these books, I had to travel, I had to live in different countries. Being what I was not enough. I did not know enough about other cultures, other communities. So I started traveling. I spent a year in Europe. Then I got a job teaching online. I went and did a year in Latin America. I did a year in Southeastern Asia. I did a year in Eastern Africa. I did a year in Istanbul, a year in Shanghai. So many different places I went. And in each place, I sort of realized that every single place had a different way of creating their border, their way of seeing the world, their identities, their cultures, their languages. And what seemed like, maybe when I was born and brought up as a binary, it was either this or that, became an infinitude. There's actually thousands upon thousands of ways that people are creating borders, probably billions, because there's 7 billion of us on this planet. So there are probably 7 billion borders and disborders that people are creating every day, all the time. And I realized, why do I have to fit into any of them? If this person believes this way is the right way, that person believes that way is the right way, why even make an attempt? Why even waste my time? So I started just letting myself learn from everywhere. When I was in China, I'd learn Chinese. I'd learn some of the things Chinese people would do. When I would be in South Africa, I would learn a little bit of their accents or ways of saying things. I let myself be open to all of it. I did not say this is mine, this is not mine. I just let everything enter into me and let myself be in conversation with everything. And so as a result, I ended up picking up a lot of different languages, I ended up living all over the world, and I ended up making a lot of international connections that I still talk to this day. I learned that I don't have to be what I was born and brought up as. I can just be an existence, connecting to all of the other existences in this universe. I can learn anything and everything that will allow me to be in conversation with any form that happens to exist in the shapes that we see before us. Now, it would be almost impossible for me to give physical advice, like practical tips, how to become a person who thinks outside the boundary of the border. I have learned to think this way because I've lived my life, I've traveled, I've chosen to live outside my comfort zone, I've chosen to deal with people who are very different from me. I've made choices that have allowed me to become this person. And for any of you who are interested in perhaps, maybe some of you would not. Maybe some of you are happy living in the boundary of the culture, the space you were born and brought up in, and that gives you comfort or identity or belonging, and that's fine. But for any of you who might want to consider becoming bigger than the lines that the world have drawn for you, I cannot just sit here or stand here and tell you this is how to do it. You have to live your life, you have to learn from others, you have to travel, you have to interact with other human beings, you have to be in conversation with this universe. But I will tell you that I feel like there are a lot of benefits in becoming what I'm attempting to be. One is that I feel connected, interconnected with people who I normally probably would not interact with. I am someone who is friends with my sabjiwala, with my chaiwala, with the person who cleans my house, with probably some of the people of a similar background here in Juho or Bandra, with a diplomat in Russia, with a random backpacker coming from Slovenia. I can be connected to anyone that I so choose to connect with. And I like also being able to connect not just with other human beings, but also other existences. I can learn interesting things in my YouTube videos about how to better communicate with cats. I can learn interesting facts about algebra, calculus that can help me maybe communicate with symbolic ideas and notions of the universe. I can be in conversation with all existence, all essence, all identity, all at once. I don't have to demarcate myself. When I do choose my identities, I choose so with passion and love. I do identify as a Kannadiga because Kannada is my mother tongue and I like speaking my mother tongue. I like being in a position where I am in conversation with my ancestors or my forefathers have given to my mother tongue. I don't choose to speak in it because I think I'm better than someone who speaks Gujarati or Marathi or Urdu or whatever. I am choosing to be in the line of whatever my ancestors chose to give me. Conversely, I happen to love being gay. I love being an LGBTQI person. I love connecting with people of other LGBTQI experiences. And again, I would never say because I'm this way, I'm better than that person or this person. I would want to be inclusive to any person of different ways of seeing the world to make them feel included and a part of the conversations that are happening in front of us. I choose my identities not because I want to say I'm better than someone or I want to perform an identity, but because I believe they give me wisdom and strength and something to anchor myself onto this world. And finally, I am able to learn. I think part of the reason why I speak so many languages and I'm fairly able to get along with anyone is because I don't just perform what I think will help me to look better in front of a certain community or society or background. I try just to learn things because I believe they'll help me get in better touch with anyone or anything. And so I personally believe that this has allowed me to learn the languages I've learned, be more able to access information, because I might find an interesting proverb in Chinese or Turkish interesting, but I won't just learn an interesting proverb to make myself look good in Hindi or Kannada or something. I'll learn because I actually want to learn. So these are all different things that I personally feel have benefited me by choosing to live outside the boundary of the border. And again, I don't think I can give any advice because it's a lived experience, but I really hope that all of you someday will consider the benefits of living in this untethered and infinite universe that happens to exist in this world outside the boundaries of the border. Thank you so much for your time. Questions? Go ahead. Oh, thank you.
In your speech, you had this really wonderful line about being in conversation with the universe. Can you tell us a little more about how to be more open to discussing things with people and to having conversations with everyone we meet?
So first of all, let me clarify, when I was your age, I was very different. I'm 33 now and I'm still younger compared to most of the people here, or half of the people here, but I'm just telling you, you might be 16, 17, you still might be insecure, learning about who you are, and so these are things I think need a little bit more maturity to fully imbibe or involve. I don't think it's something that you can immediately practice, but just like that, be open, be aware, be curious, and accept, we're all humans ultimately, we're all flawed, and I'm someone who was relentlessly bullied in high school, like some of you also might be, so it's very hard at that age to have that security, right? So learning to be at that point, I think freedom, being able to be outside of the environment I was brought up in, go to another place, go to a place where no one knew me and I could just talk freely, be myself freely, that helped a lot, and that's very liberating, traveling, because you can go to a country like Spain where the language is different, the culture is different, and you can completely adapt or metamorphosize yourself. I mean, I don't want to say you should throw away what you are. Everyone is beautiful in the shape that the universe has given you. But I think there's also beautiful and Kannada rupantara, which means transformation, changing one's form, changing one's image to fit another version of the divine, I guess you could say. So I like the process of remaining yourself, but also changing your image, shaping in a different way. So I don't think there's a tip I could give you, but being aware is important. Your awareness itself is enough at this point.
You spoke about being bullied in college and how you were excluded, out of the border. How did you deal with that?
So first of all, not in college. It was in high school, like when I was in high school. I went to a college prep school, which in the 90s, 2000s was, I shouldn't say this because maybe similar type of people are here, but upper class sort of, in the context of the US, it was very antebellum, white, southern, but also very upper class, not like the easiest place to be a minority, So, I mean, maybe I shouldn't make generalizations, I don't know. But like being, say, a kid from another background in a similar school, like in even this context would be difficult, right? But in the context of the US, even though I fit into the ideas of power for India, in the US I was part of that minority, and I went to a very wealthy, white, upper class, Republican-oriented school. So what I was just a very bad fit for that space. How you deal with it, it's extremely hard. I had a lot of issues. I mean, of course, like a lot of people who are in such situations, you consider all the options, if you know what you mean. Luckily, I did not do anything like that, and I'm here today. But you know, accept you're a child, accept you're learning, accept you're young. It will pass. Everything passes, and the gifts of the universe are beautiful. I mean, we have these beautiful shapes, and we get to experience so much, and it's a beauty. So if you're feeling like an outsider now, I mean, it's okay, it'll pass, because every emotion, every feeling passes. And don't let the bullies be, I mean, they're also going through something, you know. I remember there was this one girl, I don't think I should give her name, but you know, she would actually literally say, Kiran, you're too nice. I'm actually going to just be mean to you because you're too nice. So, I mean, she's one of the people, even still in the back of my head, I despise, you know, went that loud, I despise her. But now I look back as an adult and I say, maybe she was dealing with issues too. Maybe she had people who was being bad to her, right? So a lot of the people who are bullying you probably themselves have bullies in their lives. Their parents are hitting them. They're dealing with other issues. And so have compassion for that. I mean, everyone, don't take other humans seriously. That's something else I'll tell you. Every human is flawed. I mean, they are just as stupid and insecure and ununderstanding of the world as you are. So treat a human as you would any other dog, rock, fish, any other existence. Let them be, and let them also go through what they're doing. And you're just not responsible for any of it. They're just dealing with things themselves.
Not really related to your speech, but out of any of your books, what one would you recommend to read?
Oh wow, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention this. I was told I'm not allowed to promote my writing. I have 3 projects. We have The Forsaken World, which is about 4 imagined regions and 16 people who belong to these imagined regions, and the novel interconnects their experiences and tells a shared story between the 4 places, hopping in and out. So if you're interested in experimental, more writing about creating bonds between people of different backgrounds, that would be an interesting book to read, and it has to do with global South conditions. I have another novel called Hirar, which I publish on a website, and that takes place in 365 different places in the world and emails a story of a different country each week. So that is a subscription model. One has to pay 100 rupees a month to access it, but you get a new story about a new culture, a new experience, a new way of seeing the world every 10 days. So it's nice if you're interested in how a novelist is trying to adapt the publishing of a literary novel in the globalized era, and you like reading about what is life like today in the Maldives or Turkmenistan or something, that could be of interest to you. And I have my poetry book, Speaking in Tongues, which I happen to have some copies of with me. But it's about my poetry and my experience, and part of it is my autobiography and different languages and how they've affected me. So I don't know what interests you, but there are different things that you can consider.
Since you've traveled so much, did you feel and since you've lived in so many different cities, did you feel your personality changing constantly?
Absolutely.
And was it difficult for you to understand who you really are as a person?
So first thing, my mother and father are in the audience. They will tell you I've changed so much since I was 18, 19. Every place has absolutely shaped me. You can literally, see videos of myself when I was in high school and see me now, and I'm completely different. Not unrecognizable, but fairly different. My way of speaking, coming across, very different. Now I've become a person, like even when I speak, my accent hops across 5 different continents. So I sound a little Indian, South African, Australian, English, American. It just depends on the word. So even it comes across in everything, for better, for worse. That being said, do I not understand? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on the day. I'm also a human being, and even though I might come off as very confident now, like any other human being, I can have my days where I'm crying in front of the mirror, or feeling really insecure and hurt at the world. But generally, yes, I know I'm here to write. I know I'm here to encourage and impassion others, and I believe strongly in what I have to give to this world, and that does not change. I know. Other people like me, yeah. Or maybe I'll actually say I seek out people who are like me, but ethnically, culturally, racially different. I found people who are like me, who would be like fashion designer, a fashion designer based in Istanbul, a fellow visual artist in Yogyakarta. That's actually something, I don't know how many of you have traveled, but I think that's one of the most humbling things about traveling is you go to a random country and you meet a person from Turkey, Indonesia, whatever, and you're like, this person is so much like me. How is it possible? Yeah, exactly. So I think I seek out people who are like me across all the different shades or experiences, the superficial experiences of the human condition.
I'm really sorry to cut this off.
Oh,
but
no
we
problem.
won't be taking any more questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Kiran.
You can come say hi to me after. I'll be there somewhere standing. No problem. Now someone else will have to take this on.
Next up, we have Dr. Sanket Prasad. Dr. Sanket Prasad is a laparoscopic gynae surgeon who has his own patented technology and his very own invention, which has been featured on several websites and publications. He has also posted several surgical videos showing the efficiency of his invention. Dr. Sanket Prasad has also received awards for his work. This invention, SVU, has been brought into the market too. Please welcome our final speaker, Dr. Sanket Prasad.
Thank you everyone. Thank you TEDxJNS. Thank you my friend Devansh for inviting me here today. And my name is Dr. Sanket Prasad. I am a gynecological laparoscopic surgeon, and which basically means that I do surgeries via the minimal access route. That means instead of taking large cuts on the skin, I do them using small microsurgical instruments and cameras. My story goes back to about 15 years when I was still doing my training in minimal access surgery. At that time, this patient in concern was undergoing a laparoscopic fibroid removal surgery, also called as a laparoscopic myomectomy. And during this surgery, it is standard surgical practice to inject a little bit of this drug called vasopressin into the fibroid to reduce bleeding as the fibroid is being taken out. So on that day, my chief surgeon injected the standard recommended dose of vasopressin into the patient. And a minute later, this patient's heart just stopped functioning. She had suffered a massive cardiac arrest. We tried our best to revive her, but in vain. The patient was gone. Now, one of the bad things about being a surgeon or a doctor is that you sometimes have to break bad news. So we called the patient's husband inside, and he came inside with their 6-year-old daughter. How were we ever going to tell this little girl that she would never see her mother anymore ever again? I thought about this incident at that night and for many nights hence. And then finally, I went to see my chief surgeon. The chief surgeon, he was already distraught at the incident, but he said, look, it's really unfortunate, but these things happen. If only there was some way to find out that we were injecting outside the blood vessels of the fibroid rather than into the blood vessels, that would make it really amazing. Wait, what? What are you trying to say? He explained, see, the instruments that we use, they are long, metallic, opaque instruments. And because we are not able to actually see whether we've hit a blood vessel or not, we don't really know if we are injecting into a blood vessel. We are just hoping that we aren't injecting into a blood vessel. Now, don't get me wrong, we operate at some of the best institutes in the city, and patients have access to medical care at par with what they would have in the Western world completely. So, with such cutting-edge technology, leaving an event like this to chance sounded absolutely incredulous. I started finding and digging deeper into journals of critical care medicine. And a month later of reading again and again, I found out that the problem was very real. Patients were dying all over the world. Patients were left paralyzed after injections of this drug, and no one had done anything about it. I was amazed. Why hadn't anyone done anything about this so far? 2 months later, I accompanied a friend of mine. His little kid, about 8-year-old, he had some problem, and we had to take him to the pathology lab for a blood test. As the nurse started to draw blood, the kid asked her, "How are you sure you are not going to prick me twice?" So the nurse smiled and answered, "See this little needle right here? It's got a transparent tip at the end. So if I see blood in that transparent tip, I'll know that I'm in the right place and I won't have to prick you twice." That was my eureka moment. I sat down at night, made a hand sketch of the drawing, and I sent it to my professor or my boss in Belgium. He took a look at the design and he said, this looks fantastic, but you're going to have to pull through this by making some modifications and telling someone to make a prototype for you. How exactly do you think you're going to be able to do that? Well, that shouldn't be too difficult, I thought. I'll just speak to people. So the next day, I called up one of the leading instrument manufacturers in Mumbai, and he called me over to his office. So I went there and I explained the idea to him. 10 minutes into my presentation, I could understand that he wasn't the least bit interested. Come back some other day, he told me, we'll see on some other time. So I went to see someone else. The other person told me, look, the idea and all is fine, but doc, how many of these do you think can I sell in the next year? And do you have a 5-year revenue projection chart that I can follow? Of course, I had nothing. A third person told me, all this is fine, but how long have you been in practice? What, 2 years, 3 years? How can you possibly think of something that no one else has thought of in the past 50 years? I wrote to an international company. And the international company wrote back saying that, yes, your idea does seem plausible, but it's too easy to manufacture. And so we don't really want to put our brains into something that is so easy to make because it's not a viable investment. So I did what most people do best. I just gave up. And I let the idea lay on my desk, lying dust, for the next 5 years. Then one day, a small-time instrument manufacturing company called me and said, we wanted to see you. It was the fag end of the day. I was really tired of my clinic, but I called him. And as he went over his inventory, I listened unattentively. But while leaving, he said, Doc, if you want something specially customized for you, we can do that too. So I called him, I showed him my design, and he said, yeah, this looks okay, we can do this, but I can't give you 1 or 2. You will have to place an order for a minimum 100 pieces. Now, one of the other things which is bad about being a doctor in India is that at the starting point of your career, you earn a small pittance of what your counterparts in the Western world would. So placing an order for 100 units would mean that I would set back my dream of owning a car by 2 more years, and that Singapore trip would just be a pipe dream. So I came back home, we gave it a good thought, but finally I decided to place the order. And so we placed the order. 6 months of going back and forth, testing, discarding, retesting, and making it again. And 6 months later, he brought to me a prototype that sounded good. It looked crude, but it would do the job. And so I started testing. Once I tested it, it worked, and it worked like a charm. And now I was sure that the medical fraternity would welcome this new development with open arms, because this was like cutting edge science, homegrown in your own backyard. But I was wrong. I met over 100 people from my field. Sometimes I met them over lunch, sometimes I met them in conferences, sometimes at their clinics, and the 100 units that I had made and 100 more I distributed completely free of cost. Other than the 2 or 3 who seemed interested, no one else absolutely seemed to care. I met one international surgeon of great repute who listened to me, took the device from me, and as he made his way to the hotel room, dumped it in the trash can by the elevator. I was flabbergasted. I had no idea what to do. And so I continued. There was one of my friends standing with me at that time, and he said, what if this guy, this hotshot, tries to pass off your device as his own? How are you going to prevent that? And so started the entire process of patenting the device. The amount of money that I had to spend on acquiring a patent, I acquired from a bank at an astronomical interest rate. I was working double shifts just to pay the bank loan, and with no promise of any tangible return except for the thought that there is a dream which might someday come true. 8 or 9 months into this, and I was convinced that I should have never taken up this stupid idea to begin with, and that this entire effort of so many years had been a waste. But looking for a silver lining to the dark cloud, I kept on, and one day one of my friends told me about a competition. This was organized in Bengaluru, and people had invited ideas. So they had invited applications from all over the country, from innovators, to showcase their designs. I applied. And I was judged by a panel of IIT graduates, of hospital management gurus, and even someone from the health ministry. And incidentally, I won the silver medal in that category. After I won the silver medal, I realized that there was at least someone out there who believed that the idea had some potential. A few days later, to my pleasant surprise, I received a letter. And this letter was from the International Society of Gynecological Endoscopy. This is the apex body of gynecological endoscopy in the world. And the letter lauded this new development as one of the important, newer, significant achievements in gynecological endoscopy and recommended its use to the entire community. Now this was an absolute turning point. Once international appraisal came in, then things started to move quickly. There is a saying in Hindi, "Ghar ki murgi dal barabar," which means that a prophet is never welcome in his own hometown. Once international appraisal started coming in, I started receiving calls from instrument manufacturers for exclusive rights to make the needle. The international guys whom I had contacted, they got back saying that they were also interested, but I decided to stay with the Indian guys who had been with me right from the start. Surgeons started displaying the device in their YouTube videos and their operating rooms as the next important thing in gynecological endoscopy. The Indian Association also took notice, and I was awarded with the Innovator of the Year award for the year 2021. So that happened, and at present today, this device, a Make in India device, sells to about 35 countries in the world. It is the principle still remains the same. If blood is present, you pierce into a different location and aspirate, the same thing that the nurse said. And if you don't see any blood in the aspirate, then you inject it, and this remarkably increases patient safety. Today, we have for this device stringent quality control approvals from more than 35 countries in the world, and these are very difficult to come by. So once this was done, I'm sorry, I think this is paused. Yeah. So once this was done, we did not stop there. Every time someone posts a picture on Facebook about how this needle helped them, I think it is probably one more life that we saved, and we remember the eyes of that little girl who was there in the counseling room on that day. We also went on to do something more. Along with industry partners, we created a small fund. And today this fund helps young innovators realize their dreams. And today I think I'm able to give back a little bit of what I could not get in showing people the way forward. What did I learn from this entire exercise? First thing, work without a precedent. Even though it may not seem like the correct thing, even if it has not been done by someone else before you, you can still do it. Ironically, this is exactly the opposite of what is taught to us at med school, but sometimes this is what is required. Believe in yourself. Believe me, I have never participated in an elocution or a debate in school at any point of time, and yet today I can speak to an audience of thousands of people about my subject, all because I am 100% sure of what I am saying. So believe in yourself, that's very important. Think deeply. Students, there are a lot of students here, think and think deeply. Some of the more traditional methods of teaching, like writing essays, for example, these make you imagine, think, and process information. Though AI and ChatGPT are there, these cannot do that for you. And sometimes this is exactly what is needed. Think, process, implement, fail, and start again. Keep doing that until the time that you succeed. What is success? So nowadays, all of us are looking for false likes and praises on social media for everything that we do. And yet, the glory or the passion of having done something that no one else in the world has ever done before has blunted me to any form of false glory. I now do exactly what is right for my patients, and slowly all the naysayers, they just fall in line. Criticism is good, and critics are for real because they make you think, and sometimes that's a very, very good thing. In the medical fraternity, as a people, we are very resistant to change. Everyone always tells us, don't mend what is not broken. But is it not broken? Have you looked closely enough whether it is broken or not? Maybe you haven't. I still get questions, is your device foolproof? No. Can it prevent an accident in each and every case? Of course not. But are we one step closer to making this surgery safer for our patients? Definitely yes. And if that's not enough, then I don't know what is. There are in this audience so many bright young minds and so many of you who will listen to this later on, probably online. To all of you, I urge you to dream and to work hard to achieve it. Because even if you fail, you will have had the experience of a lifetime. And who knows, you might even get invited to a TED Talk someday. And that is one of the things that money can't buy. Thank you so much for your patience and for listening.
Thank you for your talk, Dr. Sanket. We'd now like to open it up to questions from the audience.
So, how do you encourage yourself in times of failure, and how do you make yourself keep going?
I write down what I think is correct on a board in front of me, and I see it every day morning till it comes true.
You spoke about what kind of inspired you to come up with this device, but what led you to the field of medicine in the first place?
That's a little difficult to answer. Sometimes it's the passion to do something different or to heal people, and sometimes it's just compulsion. So when you get into the outside world, I dare say that every time your choices will not be judged by your liking. Sometimes you have to choose the best among what's available, and when you choose that, you have to make the best of what you choose.
Kids are so distracted, they just want to go on the social platform, forget hard work. They just don't want to work. How do you motivate them to work?
That's very difficult to answer, madam. Even I have 2 kids, and we are grappling with the same issues. But I think the disconnect here is in interpersonal communication. People have forgotten what it is like to talk to other people nowadays. People would rather talk to a screen. Take this thing for example. If your AC is not working, you'd rather have a chat and you'd rather book an appointment on an app than call the guy who's been servicing your AC for the past 10 years. And we think that is better. So there somewhere has been a disconnect in interpersonal communication which needs to be addressed. But times are changing, and I really don't know how things will play out. So I think that's it. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you, speaker, for your eloquent answers. We now request co-licensee and teacher in charge, Ms. Brinda Bose, to address the gathering.
Got this platform to speak. There's no denying the fact that Jamnabai Narsi School has been organizing this event, and we have won the license every year to conduct this beautiful event, but there are constraints as well. This event hasn't been planned in a day. We all go by the proverb, Rome was not built in a day, isn't it? It takes a lot of time, dedication, and resilience to put up the entire show. I feel like a grateful and an honored mother today, a proud mother hen, to have worked and supervised a fantastic team of young scholars aged 14 to 19, precisely from Standard 9 and Standard 12, who worked dedicatedly, relentlessly, staying late nights up also. We've sat through writing certificates, we've monitored the talks, we've gotten back to the speakers. Some of them were liaison officers to the speakers, and that's how we learn. Because in Jamnabai Narsi School, we believe in practical teaching. It's not only the chalkboard style anymore. What happens in the society, we start from the school. Because in school, you get a mini India and a mini world. Thank you so much. This is my 8th year in Jamnabai Narsi School. Of course, a total year of 18.5 years of teaching. But I have been conducting this for the last 7 years. And thank you. And very honestly, each year has been a learning experience. We've learned from our mistakes, we have learned and unlearned, and we have moved forward. There were bittersweet moments also. Where don't we get such learnings, tell me? But we learn the truth that life goes on and everything changes with time, and we evolve. We evolve into better human beings. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to the organizing committee. And please, ladies and gentlemen, parents, boys and girls, put your hands together. Let's applaud the efforts of all the organizing committee. Team, please come on the stage. I'm not going to be taking the individual names. Please come, please come. The stage is all yours. The dais is all yours. I resonate with all of you, dear speakers, because I'm not a seasoned speaker myself. It is very different to speak to unknown audience all of a sudden and to seasoned students in the classroom every day. Over there, my responsibility is that of a teacher, a facilitator, and a guide. But over here, you must be thinking, what is Ms. Bose trying to convey? I'm just trying to convey in a nutshell, let's motivate and inspire one another. That's it. Lots of love from all of us. Thank you. Shwansuta, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. Okay, I know all of us have had a very long event, and we do want to leave as quickly as possible. Please bear with me for the next few minutes, because this is perhaps the most important part of the event for me. Several months ago, I received a phone call inducting me into this prestigious position of being the licensee for this event. And from then onwards, I have had a lot of tomorrows, but all of them have led to this day, to this very moment. I had always thought that TEDx was my event, my vision. But I think my greatest learning throughout this entire experience has been that this event belongs to the world. It belongs to my 26-person OC who has worked day and night to put together this event. It belongs to all our esteemed speakers who've put so much thought into sharing their ideas with you. And finally, it belongs to you, my dear audience, for listening and being such a receptive audience. I'm 17 right now, and as a young adult foraying into the world, I always thought I'm going to be a journalist. But through the process of organizing this event, I understood that I was slightly off. I don't want to be a journalist. I want to be a storyteller, a person who brings together different communities by giving a platform to untold stories and unexplored ideas, which is why this event is so very close to my heart. And I could not have done it without my team of heads of departments. To begin with, heads, please come on stage as I take your name. Head of Speaker Curation, Vidyut Iyer. So a fun little fact is both Vidyut and I are co-heads of the Student Council together. We began this journey almost a year ago. He's one of the only individuals that I believe to have as much passion about this event as I do, and his efforts to build it from ground up, from contacting speakers, guiding them, through the talk writing process, it leaves me with nothing but respect and gratitude. I am incredibly lucky to have found a work partner in this really diligent and intelligent individual, so please give him a huge round of applause. Thank you. Head of Operations, Shlok Mamaya. Shlok here is one of my closest friends. We began our journey in Jamnabai together. The first time we met was in this very hall. And our shared passion for perfectionism makes us an absolutely fantastic duo. He has an amazing eye for detail, sheer dedication, and he has an ability to alleviate tension in the room like this. And that is what I admire most about him. Thank you so much for being such a constant support. Moving on, Head of Communications, Marketing and Public Relations, Dhruvi Kapadia. Dhruvi and I have two things in common. First, that we are the only two girls on the core team, and second, that we are both very tiny individuals. So in the truest sense, both of us are chota packet, bada dhamaka. Dhruvi has some of the most exemplary ideas. Thank him for his immense dedication. Thank you, Dev. Last but certainly not the least, Head of Finance, Krish Goradia. For the past few weeks, I think running up and down the school stairs, contacting suppliers, calling them, always being behind the support staff to get work done has been our favorite pastime. We spent countless hours doing this, and I must tell you, Krish is an absolute gem of an individual. He has left no stone unturned making this event a success, and his commitment and fervor inspire me. Thank you so much, Krish. Oh, okay. Finally, coming to my very, very wonderful organizing committee. Please clap for yourself, guys. You deserve this applause more than anyone else. I have seen all of these members are younger than me, so I've seen them as people who are trembling and nervous in the interview room, hoping they will get selected, to the very people we handpicked to embellish this event. They have seen immense growth and they have been tested at every moment, and I'm so happy to say that they have persevered. I could not be prouder of each and every one of you. The future of TEDx looks absolutely bright to me. So congratulations to each and every one of you. I've been said that the heads want to speak, so I will conclude this speech later. Please bear with us. I'm so sorry.
We request Swanchita to please take the stage.
So this is entirely impromptu, and while she was talking about us, we realized that everything this event has been today and what it has been for the past 2-3 months, the first line Swanchita said is TEDx is not just her vision, but it entirely is, and I hope every single person in this room was able to see that, and every OC member can stand by it. TEDx JNS Youth 2023 was Swanchita Dash.
Swanchita's ability to take charge in situations where I or the entire team would just stutter and stop. She has an eye for perfection, as she said for me, and I know for a fact that the team that she selected and the work that she's done in this year's TEDx event, it's gonna resonate in the coming years, and we're going to see the remnants of Swanchita echo through time. So that's all I have to say.
A final line, she just said that our future of TEDx JNS Youth is very bright, but I promise you no one will be able to fill her shoes. Thank you.
Okay, wow. Please give me 1 second. I would like to take a moment to thank the management of our school, without whom none of this would have been possible. We would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to Managing Trustee Shri Jairaj Thakkar and members of the Trust family for their unstinting support given to every student and staff member alike. It is because of their encouragement and best wishes that we strive to reach our fullest potential. We would like to thank our principal, Srimati Kalpana Patange, for teaching us that true learning begins outside the classroom and emphasizing the importance of extracurricular activities in a student's life. We thank Vice Principal and ISC Coordinator, Ms. Sonali Gandhi, Vice Principal Srimati Rekha Nair, Headmistresses Ms. Pamela Jacob and Ms. Sheetal Jain for their support in this endeavor. We also appreciate the efforts of our school's IT department and support staff. We are very, very grateful to our advisory committee led by Mukund Harinathani for ensuring that we are on the right path. We have benefited so much from his experience. Just to give a backstory, Mukund started both the TED clubs at Jamnabai almost 6 to 7 years ago, and his vision is what we live today. We would like to thank our teachers in charge, Ms. Brinda Bose Sen Gupta. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words. Ms. Meenu Joshi, Ms. Geetan Bharadwaj and Mr. Mitesh Bhatt for being our pillars of support. We are immensely grateful for their unwavering guidance and for walking us step by step to make this event a reality. Finally, I express my immense gratitude to our eminent speakers, Mrs. Madhurima Bose, Mr. Gautam Acharya, Chef Anil Rohira, Mr. Kiran Bhatt, and Dr. Sanket Pisat. Thank you so much for trusting our platform with your wonderful ideas, which are immortalized in our hearts, our brains, and now on the internet as well. They will certainly continue to inspire countless people around the globe. We will now play the TEDxYouth JNS behind the scenes video to show you what went into curating this event. I thank every one of you for making this event a roaring success. Thank you. Again, I would like to take another moment to congratulate each of the speakers. All these talks, your dear audience, were completely original, completely written from scratch, and it has been an inspiring process to be a part of. Sir, ma'am, thank you so much for giving us your time and dedication. Thank you.
जहां वैसे का वैसा है, हम पल्ली है यहाँ। मुझसे बाहें ना छुड़ा, कहीं खो ना जा, जो भी होगा I am with you। यू ना घबरा, थोड़ा मुस्कुरा, जो भी होगा I am with you। एक मैं हूँ और एक
Please rise for the school anthem, followed by the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा। विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा। तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मांगे। गाहे तव जय गाथा, जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Thank you so much for being here today. We request our organizing committee members to escort speakers and their families for refreshments. Please exit using the door on your left.
Goodbye. We hope you had an insightful session today, and we hope to see you next year at TEDxYouth JNS.